The cold came through the polished glass of Halcyon Motors like it had been invited. Outside, snow swept across the test court in thin white sheets. Inside, investors stood beneath warm lights with champagne in their hands and watched Vivian Hale laugh at a truck that looked older than half the people in the room. It was a faded blue pickup with a primer gray passenger door, rust along the wheel wells, and one headlight held in place by a ring of dull brass. A small star hung from the ignition key, hand-cut, uneven, the kind of thing a child made because perfection had never been the point. "You brought that to an innovation showcase?" Vivian asked. Elias Mercer stood beside the truck in a clean work jacket that had been mended twice at the elbow. "I brought what is inside it." The laughter around them was softer than hers, but crueler for trying not to be heard. Less than an hour later, the building lost power. A locked fire door trapped 3 technicians in the prototype wing. Halcyon's newest electric vehicle went dark on the test floor, and through the blackened glass, Vivian saw the old truck's bed rise on hidden hinges. Beneath it, blue-white lines of light came alive around a machine no one at Halcyon had ever seen. "Who built that?" she whispered. Elias looked at her, across the emergency glow. "The engineer your company erased?" What Vivian found inside that truck would force her to choose between the company carrying her father's name and the truth that could destroy it. Before we go back to the day, Elias almost refused to drive through Halcyon's gates. Tap like if you believe worth is often hidden beneath what people dismiss. And tell me in the comments whether you would have trusted the truck or the woman laughing at it. The day before Innovation Day, Elias Mercer had been lying beneath that same truck with snowmelt dripping down the back of his neck and a foreclosure notice folded in his coat pocket. The truck was parked inside Mercer Machine Works, though the word works had become generous. The old brick building sat at the edge of Riverton, Michigan, between an abandoned stamping plant and a row of warehouses that had changed names so many times, the signs had become layers. Elias's grandfather had bought the place when machine shops still ran 3 shifts, and men came home smelling of cutting oil. His father had kept it alive through 2 recessions. Elias had inherited it with 12 lathes, 8 employees, and enough contracts to believe history could be paid in monthly installments. Now he had 1 working lathe, a welding table, a wall of hand tools, and a roof that leaked into 3 carefully placed buckets. He slid from beneath the truck and reached for a rag. "Did it make the bad sound?" June asked. She sat cross-legged on a stool near the workbench, wearing purple snow boots and a red coat because the shop furnace had stopped pretending to heat the whole room. At 7, June had the serious eyes of a person who considered questions a form of work. A sheet of thin brass rested on her knees. She was cutting another small star with blunt shop scissors, turning the metal between each careful bite. "It made a sound," Elias said. "I have not decided whether it is bad yet." "It squeaked when you turned left." "That is useful information." "It also squeaked when you went straight." "Less useful?" June smiled without looking up. Elias wiped his hands and glanced toward the office window. The foreclosure notice was still in his pocket, but he could feel it as clearly as if it had been nailed to the wall. 30 days to cure the default? $21,400, plus fees. The bank had used calm language. Banks always did. Calm language made taking a building sound like correcting a spelling mistake. On the workbench beside June lay a printed announcement from Halcyon Motors. Halcyon Open Innovation Day. Independent engineers, small suppliers, fleet mechanics, bring the solution others missed. The winning design would receive a development contract worth up to $250,000. June had circled the amount in green marker. "You are staring at it again," she said. "I am reading." "You have read it 14 times? "That many?" I counted after 6. Elias picked up the page. The paper had been folded and unfolded until the center line had gone soft. Halcyon Motors was 22 miles away and several worlds apart. Its glass headquarters rose above a manufacturing campus that employed 9,000 people. Its name appeared on trucks, buses, delivery vans, and the silver electric prototypes that magazine writers called the future of American movement. 3 years earlier, Lena Mercer had worked there. The thought did not arrive like pain anymore. Pain suggested surprise. This was weight. It lived where it lived. Elias set the announcement down. "We are not going," he said. June held up the brass star she had finished. One point was slightly shorter than the others. Why? Because Halcyon is not looking for what we have. It says, "Bring the solution others missed." Announcements say many things. Mom worked there. Elias looked at her. June's voice had not changed. She had never known how to approach grief sideways. She walked straight toward it, usually carrying a drawing. Mom said the truck could help people. She continued, "You said she was right." She was right. Then maybe they should see it. Elias turned toward the truck. It had once been blue in the bright, uncomplicated way of summer sky. 30 years of salt, sun, and work had changed the color into something quieter. The driver's seat was split beneath a canvas cover. The dashboard had 3 original gauges, 2 newer ones, and a narrow black display mounted where the ashtray had been. Under the bed, hidden behind weathered steel and oak boards, was the reason Elias checked the shop doors twice each night. Lattice 9. Lena had named it at 2 in the morning because the cooling channels crossed like the garden trellis behind their first apartment. 9 was the number of failed versions that had come before it. The system was not a battery. It was not a motor. It was the space between those things. The part that kept heat from turning power into danger. Flexible ceramic channels. Phase change cells. A control system, simple enough to fail safely and precise enough to adapt before a sensor became an alarm. Halcyon had spent hundreds of millions trying to solve the same problem. Lena had solved most of it in a rented garage, with Elias holding a flashlight. Then Halcyon had buried her work. Then she had died before they could prove it. Elias reached for the key hanging on a peg beside the truck. The brass star June had made last winter was tied to it with red thread. On the back, in letters, punched one by one, were 3 words Lena used whenever Elias became too proud of a clean weld. Useful before, beautiful. The phrase had been hers. The star was June's. The truck carried both of them. "We will drive past," Elias said. June tilted her head. "Past Halcyon? We will see how the truck behaves on the highway, and if it behaves, then we will keep driving." She nodded as if this were a contract. The next morning, the truck behaved. It started before dawn, without the hard crank people expected from something that old. The electric drive engaged beneath the floor with a low hum. Elias let the original engine remain silent. That was part of the disguise. From outside, the truck looked like it should leave a blue cloud at every light. Instead, it moved through the frozen streets with no exhaust, and almost no sound beyond the tires. June sat beside him on the bench seat with her backpack between her boots. "You missed the school turn," she said. "I know. Halcyon is the other way. I also know that—" She looked out the window so he would not see her smile. The highway carried them north through old factory towns and new office parks. Elias watched the thermal readings on the small black display. 23 degrees at the forward pack, 25 at the rear. Outside temperature 18, load steady. Lattice 9 kept the difference within 2 degrees, exactly as Lena had intended. At the Halcyon exit, Elias almost continued straight. Then June reached up and touched the brass star, hanging from the key. He took the ramp. Halcyon's campus began with a stone wall and a silver sign wide enough to hide the shop where Elias had spent the last 8 years. Security towers rose behind landscaped berms. Beyond them stood the glass headquarters, 3 manufacturing buildings, a wind tunnel, a battery laboratory, and the oval test court, where new vehicles ran beneath the eyes of investors who had never changed a tire. Traffic for Innovation Day backed up at the visitor gate. Sleek vans arrived on trailers. Startups unloaded polished prototypes beneath branded tents. Engineers in matching jackets carried carbon fiber cases that seemed designed to contain either a breakthrough or a very expensive lunch. The old truck rolled forward, one silent car length at a time. A security guard stepped from the booth and looked at the hood. Deliveries use Gate 4. We are here for Innovation Day, Elias said. The guard looked at June, then back at Elias. Exhibitor, applicant, Elias Mercer. The guard checked a tablet. His eyes stopped for half a second when he found the name. You submitted after the deadline? The portal accepted it. The portal accepts until midnight. Review closed at 5. Then I suppose we drove 22 miles for the scenery. The guard's mouth moved slightly, not quite a smile. He looked again at the truck. There's overflow parking behind Building C. You can speak with intake. No promises. I am not asking for one. The gate lifted. June waited until they were inside. You were asking for one. Quiet confidence. June. That was not quiet confidence. What was it? Worried stubbornness? Elias glanced at her. Your mother taught you too much. You say that when I am right. Overflow parking was half a mile from the showcase pavilion. Elias parked between a refrigerated delivery van and a spotless white pickup whose hood had been removed to reveal a maze of copper lines. He checked the truck's lockout switch, then lowered the bench seat. Behind it, a narrow steel panel covered the control manifold and the document compartment. Lena's original notebooks were sealed inside a fireproof sleeve. Test logs, material receipts, dated photographs, and 2 patent drafts rested beneath them. Elias had kept digital copies in 3 places. He still trusted paper more. June watched him secure the panel. Are we showing him everything? No. Why not? Because people who laugh before they listen do not get every answer at once. They walked toward the pavilion, carrying a plain gray binder. Inside, the air smelled of coffee, carpet, and new plastic. Rows of display stations filled the hall. One company demonstrated a steering system with a robotic arm. Another had built a delivery pod that followed colored tape across the floor. Screens showed animated vehicles moving through cities without traffic, weather, bad roads, tired drivers, or any of the other things that made transportation difficult. At the intake desk, a young man in a charcoal suit looked at Elias's badge form. Mercer, he repeated. Any connection to Lena Mercer? Elias felt June go still beside him. She was my wife? The young man's practiced expression changed. He looked quickly toward another desk. One moment. He left with the form. June whispered, He knows Mom. He knows the name. Is that different? Usually, a woman returned with a young man. She wore a blue Halcyon jacket and a badge that identified her as Dr. Moira Chen. Materials Integrity, retired advisor. Her hair was white, cut close at the jaw. She looked at Elias the way an engineer looked at a part that had appeared on a tab. Lee, without a drawing? You are Lena's husband, she said. I am. Moira's eyes moved to June. Something softened, then tightened again. I'm sorry, she said. Elias nodded. He had learned that there were apologies a person could answer, and apologies that simply needed room. Moira looked at the gray binder. What did you bring? A thermal management system. For which platform? Any platform that can be divided into modules. Chemistry? Chemistry agnostic. Her eyebrows lifted. Cooling medium? Passive? Phase change? Lattice with active ceramic routing. Moira did not move for a moment. Then she said, very quietly. Lattice. Elias held her gaze. You knew about it? I knew there was a concept. Lena stopped speaking to me before I understood how far she had taken it. She did not stop speaking to you. Halcyon Security revoked her access and legal told her not to contact anyone in the company. Moira's face lost color. Before she could answer, the young man at intake cleared his throat. Dr. Chen, Mr. Mercer is not on the reviewed list. We have no open stations. Moira looked toward the crowded floor. Put him in the mechanical annex. That area is reserved for late-stage demonstrations. Then reserve it for one more. Ms. Hale is doing the walkthrough in 20 minutes. Good, Moira said. She should see this. The mechanical annex was not part of the main showcase. It was a concrete bay behind the pavilion, where forklifts moved crates and technicians charged vehicles between demonstrations. Elias was given a folding table near a roll-up door. No screen, no sign, no power outlet within reach. He set down the binder. June stood beside him and looked at the polished displays visible through the glass partition. This is the bad table, she said. It is a table. It is beside the trash bins. Those are recycling containers. Halcyon is very advanced. She considered that, then took 3 brass stars from her backpack and placed them along the edge of the table. Now it looks better. Useful before beautiful. It can be both. Elias looked at her and thought, not for the first time, that Lena had left more behind than any laboratory could have held. For the next hour, 3 junior engineers stopped at the table. 2 asked real questions. 1 photographed the binder cover and walked away. Elias explained the system without explaining the system. He described the problem. Battery packs failed unevenly because heat did not move evenly. Sensors reacted after differences formed. Pumps added weight, complexity, and failure points. Lattice 9 treated the pack like a living field instead of a row of boxes. It moved heat before heat became a crisis. Do you have simulation data? One engineer asked. Yes. Independent validation? A working rig? Elias pointed through the open roll-up door toward the far parking lot. The engineer followed his hand. The blue truck. Yes. That is the rig. Part of it. The engineer laughed once, then saw Elias was not joking. You converted that. Among other things? Why keep the body? Because it still works. The engineer looked as if he wanted to ask more, but movement on the main floor drew everyone toward the glass. Vivian Hale had entered the pavilion. She was younger than the photographs on the company website made her appear, and more tired than the magazine covers allowed. She wore a dark green suit without a coat despite the cold, her hair pinned neatly at the back. A group moved around her in a practiced orbit. Executives, investors, communications staff, and one tall man in a gray suit, who kept half a step closer than the others. Adrian Kessler. Elias recognized him immediately. Kessler had been Halcyon's vice president of advanced systems when Lena's access was revoked. He had signed the notice stating that her testing methods violated company safety rules. 6 months later, he had become chief operating officer. A year after that, he had appeared beside Vivian H. Ale at a charity gala, his hand at the small of her back. The engagement announcement had followed. The breakup had been quieter. Kessler looked toward the annex and saw Elias. His stride changed, only slightly, enough. He leaned toward Vivian and said something. She turned. The distance between the pavilion and the annex was 30 feet. Elias felt it close before she took a step. Vivian entered the bay with Kessler beside her, and Moira Chen following several paces behind. The other visitors stayed near the glass. Vivian looked first at the gray binder, then at the brass stars, then at Elias's badge. Mr. Mercer, she said. Ms. Hale, your application was late, so I have been told. And yet Dr. Chen believes I should interrupt a scheduled investor tour. Moira spoke from behind her.
I believe you should hear him.
Vivian did not turn. I heard the description. Passive phase change, routing, modular architecture, chemistry agnostic. Those are attractive phrases. They are also accurate, Elias said. Kessler looked at the binder. Where did the underlying research originate? My shop. That was not my question. It is my answer. Vivian's gaze sharpened. You were married to a former Halcyon engineer. Lena Mercer. I remember the name. Do you remember what happened to it? The bay became quiet. Kessler stepped forward. This is not an appropriate forum for unresolved employment grievances. It was not an employment grievance, Elias said. It was a safety system. Vivian raised one hand. Kessler stopped speaking. Do you have a functioning prototype? She asked. Yes. Where? Elias nodded toward the parking lot. The white pickup engineer, who had drifted close enough to hear, gave a short laugh before he caught himself. Vivian followed Elias's gesture through the roll-up door. The old truck sat beyond the fence line under a pale winter sun. Rusted wheel wells, faded paint, primer gray door. For 1 second, Vivian simply stared. Then a laugh escaped her. It was not loud. It was not the broad, performative laugh of someone trying to humiliate him. It sounded like fatigue, losing its balance. You brought that to Halcyon Innovation Day? A few people behind the glass smiled. Elias felt June move closer to his side. I brought what is inside it, he said. Vivian looked at him again. And what is inside it? A system, your company said, could not be built. Kessler's expression hardened. Vivian's laugh disappeared. Then show me. Elias closed the binder. Not here? You drove onto my campus, asking for a development contract. I drove onto your campus, asking to be evaluated. That is not the same as opening every panel, while the man who buried my wife's work stands beside you. No one behind the glass moved now. Kessler's voice went flat. Be careful, Mr. Mercer. I have been careful for 3 years. Vivian studied Elias for a long moment. Her face had become unreadable again. You have 10 minutes, she said. Bring the truck to test court 2. You may demonstrate external performance without exposing proprietary components. If there is nothing worth seeing, you leave the campus and do not return. And if there is, then we discuss terms. Elias picked up the binder. June gathered the brass stars. As they walked toward the parking lot, she whispered. She laughed at Mom's truck. It was my truck, before it was your mother's laboratory. That does not make it better. No, Elias said. It does not. Test Court 2 was a strip of heated concrete behind a battery lab, bordered by cameras and low steel barriers. A silver Halcyon prototype waited near the center. Its body was smooth, its wheels nearly covered, its glass dark enough to reflect the winter sky. Elias drove the old truck through the gate. Investors gathered behind the barrier. Engineers stood with tablets ready. Vivian watched from the front row with Kessler on one side and Moira on the other. June sat in the passenger seat because Elias had refused. Ale at a charity gala, his hand at the small of her back. The engagement announcement had followed. The breakup had been quieter. Kessler looked toward the annex and saw Elias. His stride changed. Only slightly. Enough. He leaned toward Vivian and said something. She turned. The distance between the pavilion and the annex was 30 feet. Elias felt it close before she took a step. Vivian entered the bay with Kessler beside her, and Moira Chen following several paces behind. The other visitors stayed near the glass. Vivian looked first at the gray binder, then at the brass stars, then at Elias's badge. Mr. Mercer, she said. Ms. Hale, your application was late, so I have been told, and yet Dr. Chen believes I should interrupt a scheduled investor tour. Moira spoke from behind her.
I believe you should hear him.
Vivian did not turn. I heard the description. Passive phase change, routing, modular architecture, chemistry agnostic. Those are attractive phrases. They are also accurate, Elias said. Kessler looked at the binder. Where did the underlying research originate? My shop. That was not my question. It is my answer. Vivian's gaze sharpened. You were married to a former Halcyon engineer. Lena Mercer. I remember the name. Do you remember what happened to it? The bay became quiet. Kessler stepped forward. This is not an appropriate forum for unresolved employment grievances. It was not an employment grievance, Elias said. It was a safety system. Vivian raised one hand. Kessler stopped speaking. Do you have a functioning prototype? She asked. Yes. Where? Elias nodded toward the parking lot. The white pickup engineer, who had drifted close enough to hear, gave a short laugh before he caught himself. Vivian followed Elias's gesture through the roll-up door. The old truck sat beyond the fence line under a pale winter sun. Rusted wheel wells, faded paint, primer gray door. For 1 second, Vivian simply stared. Then a laugh escaped her. It was not loud. It was not the broad, performative laugh of someone trying to humiliate him. It sounded like fatigue, losing its balance. You brought that to Halcyon Innovation Day? A few people behind the glass smiled. Elias felt June move closer to his side. I brought what is inside it, he said. Vivian looked at him again. And what is inside it? A system your company said could not be built. Kessler's expression hardened. Vivian's laugh disappeared. Then show me. Elias closed the binder. Not here? You drove onto my campus, asking for a development contract. I drove onto your campus, asking to be evaluated. That is not the same as opening every panel, while the man who buried my wife's work stands beside you. No one behind the glass moved now. Kessler's voice went flat. Be careful, Mr. Mercer. I have been careful for 3 years. Vivian studied Elias for a long moment. Her face had become unreadable again. You have 10 minutes, she said. Bring the truck to test court 2. You may demonstrate external performance without exposing proprietary components. If there is nothing worth seeing, you leave the campus and do not return. And if there is, then we discuss terms. Elias picked up the binder. June gathered the brass stars. As they walked toward the parking lot, she whispered. She laughed at Mom's truck. It was my truck, before it was your mother's laboratory. That does not make it better. No, Elias said. It does not. Test Court 2 was a strip of heated concrete behind a battery lab, bordered by cameras and low steel barriers. A silver Halcyon prototype waited near the center. Its body was smooth, its wheels nearly covered, its glass dark enough to reflect the winter sky. Elias drove the old truck through the gate. Investors gathered behind the barrier. Engineers stood with tablets ready. Vivian watched from the front row with Kessler on one side and Moira on the other. June sat in the passenger seat because Elias had refused. Ing pattern around sealed black modules, copper bus bars curved along the frame. At the center sat the Lattice 9 controller in a plain aluminum case, marked only with Lena's small engraved number 9. The people behind the barrier went silent. Vivian stepped through the gate. Kessler caught her arm. Do not approach an unapproved open pack. She pulled free. Elias connected a heavy output cable from the compartment to the court's emergency service port. The plug did not fit. Halcyon, change the connector, he said. The test supervisor stared at the system. That is a legacy industrial coupling. We have an adapter in Bay 2. Bay 2 is locked. June leaned across the bench seat and held up a canvas roll. Dad, Elias took it. Inside were adapters he had machined himself because Lena believed standards had a habit of changing right after a person needed them. He found the Halcyon pattern, locked it onto the cable, and connected the truck to the service port. Clear the line, he said. The supervisor moved everyone back. Elias touched the black display inside the bed. Power flowed. First came a low hum under the concrete. Then, red emergency strips lit along the court. The battery lab ventilation fans turned once, stopped, then began to spin. Inside the building, fire doors lifted one by one. 3 technicians appeared behind the glass of Bay 4. One raised both hands. Vivian stood beside the open truck bed, her face washed in the blue-white light. The laughter from less than an hour earlier seemed to belong to someone else. She looked at the ceramic lattice, the handwritten labels, the compact routing manifold, and the small engraved number 9. Her hand lifted toward it, then stopped before touching. "Who built this?" she asked. Elias secured the power flow and looked at her across the emergency glow. "Lena did," he said. "I finished what she left." Vivian's eyes moved to the number 9. Lena Mercer. The engineer your company erased. Behind Vivian, Adrian Kessler went completely still. Kessler recovered first. "Disconnect it," he said. Elias did not look at him. "The ventilation is still coming up. That equipment is on Halcyon property and may contain Halcyon intellectual property. Disconnect it now." The test supervisor looked from Kessler to the dark battery wing. "We need at least 8 more minutes to clear the bays." "Then use the diesel backup?" "The transfer control failed. That is why we are standing in the dark." Vivian turned toward Kessler. "The truck stays connected." "Vivian, we do not know what he has tied into our system." "We know it opened the doors." "That does not make it safe." Elias finally looked at him. "The output is isolated at 4 points. Current is limited below the service port rating. Your emergency circuit is taking 180 kilowatts, and the pack temperature has risen 1 degree. Kessler's eyes moved toward the open bed, and for the first time Elias saw something beneath the executive calm. Not confusion. Recognition. Moira saw it too. She stepped closer to the truck without crossing the cable. The routing plates are ceramic composite. Lena proposed that in the 5th thermal review. Kessler's voice sharpened. "A proposal is not ownership." "No," Moira said. "But a proposal Halcyon declared unworkable does not become Halcyon's property merely because someone else made it work." The court lights brightened as more circuits came online. Through the battery lab windows, the trapped technicians walked toward the exit with the supervisor guiding them. Vivian stared into the truck bed. "How long can it hold this load?" "At current draw, 3 hours, Elias said. "Longer if we shut down non-essential circuits." "And the truck drove here on the same pack?" "Yes." "How far?" "That depends on weather, load, and how much of the pack I reserve for tools." "How far, Mr. Mercer?" 480 miles under mixed use. "More if I remove the shop inverter." The test supervisor turned toward him. "In that body, at that weight." "The body is not the heavy part." June leaned out of the passenger door. "The old engine is still in it too." Every adult looked at her. She added, "For emergencies." Elias closed his eyes for half a second. Vivian almost smiled. It was a small movement, gone before it reached the rest of her face. By the time utility power returned, Halcyon Security had closed the test court and collected every visitor's phone. Communications staff called the blackout a localized infrastructure failure. Investors were guided back into the pavilion with fresh drinks. The 3 technicians from Bay 4 were examined by medical staff and released. The old truck remained connected until the last ventilation system transferred safely. Then Elias shut down the output, folded the bed compartment closed, and locked it with a mechanical key that did not belong to any electronic system Halcyon could scan. Kessler waited beside the tailgate. "You will leave the vehicle here for inspection." "No, this is not a request." "Then it is a sentence, without authority." Kessler stepped closer. "Your wife developed thermal concepts while employed by Halcyon. If this system derives from that work, the company has contractual rights. Lena developed the first sketches at home, before Halcyon assigned her to pack safety. I have dated notebooks, material invoices, and test footage. The version in this truck was built after Halcyon fired her. She resigned. You had security walk her out because she violated test protocol. Because she refused to sign your report." Kessler's face changed by less than a degree. It was enough. Vivian approached from the court entrance with Moira beside her. "What report?" she asked. Kessler turned. "An internal matter from 4 years ago. It was reviewed by legal and closed." "What report?" Elias answered before Kessler could. "The North Annex fire. Halcyon's official report said Lena bypassed a cooling interlock during an unauthorized test. She did not. She found the interlock had been disabled in software before her test window. She refused to accept blame for it. 2 days later, she was out of the building." Vivian's eyes remained on Kessler. "I signed that report." "You signed the executive summary," Kessler said, "based on findings from compliance, engineering, and outside counsel." "Did you lead the engineering review?" "I coordinated it." Moira's voice came quietly. "I was removed from the review on day 3. Vivian turned toward her. "Why?" "I was told my prior mentorship of Lena created a conflict." "By whom?" Moira looked at Kessler. The wind moved across the court. Somewhere beyond the buildings, the damaged transformer hissed in the snow. Vivian folded her arms. "Mr. Mercer, you said you came for evaluation." "You have it. The system performed under a load our flagship platform did not manage, and it supplied emergency power when our backup failed. I am offering a 30-day technical review. Halcyon will pay your standard consulting rate plus use of a secure test bay. You retain possession of the vehicle. No component is opened without your written consent." Kessler stared at her. "You cannot establish terms in a parking lot." "I just established the terms. Legal can write them in a warmer room." Elias looked at Vivian. "And Lena's authorship?" "If the evidence supports it, the record will reflect it." "That is not a term. It is what I can say before review. Then I can say no before review." June climbed down from the truck. Snow reached the tops of her boots. Vivian looked at her, then back at Elias. "You need the contract." It was not a question. Elias felt the foreclosure notice in his pocket again. "Yes," he said. "Then why are you making this difficult?" "Because needing money and surrendering the truth are different problems." For a moment, anger flashed across Vivian's face. Then something else replaced it. Respect, perhaps, though it arrived unwilling. "Why?" "Legal conference room," she said. 20 minutes. Bring the binder. The truck remains with you." The contract took 4 hours. Halcyon's first draft claimed ownership of all improvements, derivative systems, observations, and performance data produced during the review. Elias crossed out half the page. The second draft required full disclosure of pre-existing intellectual property before work began. Elias replaced it with a sealed evidence schedule held by an independent attorney. The third draft prohibited him from discussing Lena's employment, the North Annex fire, or any past Halcyon matter. He slid the paper back without marking it. "No!" Across the conference table, Vivian pressed 2 fingers to her temple. The clause protects an active review. The clause protects silence. There is a difference. Not to the person being silenced. Kessler had left after the first hour, called to a board meeting. Moira remained. So did Halcyon's general counsel, a tired woman named Dana Ruiz who had stopped pretending the process was ordinary. Dana adjusted her glasses. We can limit the provision to non-public technical information disclosed during the review. Past matters would be excluded, provided Mr. Mercer does not make knowingly false statements about current employees. I can live with that, Elias said. Vivian looked at him. You arrived after the deadline with an undocumented system installed beneath a vehicle that should not pass emissions inspection. Refused inspection. Accused my COO of misconduct and rewrote our standard agreement. The truck has historic registration. The original engine meets the requirement when operating. Moira looked down at the table. Dana's mouth twitched. Vivian did not smile. That was not the important part of my sentence. It was the inaccurate part. The room went quiet. Then Vivian leaned back. 30 days, she said. Base 17. External instrumentation first. No destructive testing. No software access from Halcyon networks. Your daughter cannot be in controlled areas. And if you violate one safety rule, the review ends. Agreed. Your first report is due Monday at 8. Today is Saturday. I know. Elias signed. At 6:30 that evening, he drove June home through streets shining with ice. The truck's cabin heater blew warm air against the windshield. June had fallen asleep against the passenger door with one glove still on. At a red light, Elias looked at the contract on the seat between them. The 30-day fee would cover the mortgage arrears if Halcyon paid on time. It would replace the shop furnace if he did not spend any of it on food, fuel, property tax, or the 100 other things money became before it reached the problem a person had named. Still, the building would breathe for another month. He touched the brass star hanging from the key. We got through the gate, he said quietly. June did not wake. Monday morning, Bay 17 was empty except for a lift, a tool cabinet, 2 work tables, and 12 cameras. The cameras were not hidden. Halcyon had mounted them in every corner, each with a small red light. Elias counted them before unloading a single tool. Theo Bell, the plant supervisor assigned to the review, watched him from the bay door. Theo was broad-shouldered, gray at the temples, and wore safety glasses even in the hallway. You planning to steal the cameras? He asked. I am planning not to forget they are there. They record video only, no audio. That is what the contract says. Theo grunted. You read contracts? That makes you dangerous around here. So I have heard. Together they positioned the truck over a recessed inspection lane. Elias allowed external scans, weight distribution, electrical isolation tests, and thermal imaging. He did not open the false bed or the panel behind the bench seat. Halcyon engineers arrived in groups. Some were curious, some were offended. A few carried the particular expression of people who believed in credentialed success was a criticism of their credentials. Elias answered direct questions and ignored remarks offered for an audience. 480 miles in winter, one battery engineer said. With an old ladder frame and original engine. Under mixed use, Elias replied. That would require energy density we do not have. Only if you assume the system wastes heat, the way yours does. The engineer smiled thinly. Heat recovery does not create energy. I did not say it did. Then what are you claiming? That not losing something is different from creating it? Theo turned away, shoulders moving once. By noon, Elias had discovered that Bay 17's floor power fluctuated under heavy draw. By 2, he had traced it to a loose neutral connection in a panel marked as inspected the previous month. He shut down the bay, called facilities, and waited. At 2:20, Vivian appeared. Why is the review stopped? Unsafe power. Facilities says the bay passed inspection. Elias pointed to the open panel across the yellow safety line. Facilities inspected the breakers. The neutral lug is heat-marked. It has been loose long enough to discolor the insulation. Did you open the panel? No. Theo did after I showed him the voltage drift. Theo nodded. He is right. Vivian looked through the bay window at the technicians waiting outside. How long to repair? 40 minutes if the threads are clean, Theo said. Longer if the bus is damaged. We lose half a day? Elias wiped his hands. You lose less than if it arcs while someone is standing beside it. Her eyes moved to him. You have been here 6 hours. You found a fault our inspection team missed, stopped work, and put 17 people behind schedule. Yes. You sound proud of that. I am not proud of delay. I am comfortable with it. There's a difference. Delay costs hours. Pretending costs people. For one instant, the word struck something in her. Elias saw it before her face closed. Send me the photographs, she said. They are already in the report folder. She turned to leave, then stopped at the doorway. Mr. Mercer. Yes. Do not use the North Annex fire as an answer to every disagreement. I did not mention it. You did not have to. She left. Work resumed at 4. Elias stayed until 9. At 8:15, Theo told him the night shift could finish external mapping. Go home, he said. Your kid is waiting. She is with my sister. That was not what I said. Elias checked the data again. The rear left module shows a 3-degree lag under regenerative load. 3 degrees is inside our tolerance. Your tolerance is the problem. Theo sighed. You are going to fit in terribly. I am not here to fit. That part is obvious. The next morning, Elias arrived at 6:40 and found a paper cup on his work table. Black coffee, no sugar, no note. He looked through the bay window. Vivian was crossing the corridor with 2 executives, already speaking before the doors closed behind her. Theo came in 5 minutes later. CEO bring you coffee? I do not know who brought it. Cafeteria opens at 7. Elias took a sip. It was the kind he drank. Coincidence, he said. Theo looked at him. You are going to fit in terribly. The 30-day review settled into a rhythm. Halcyon measured. Elias refused. They proposed a test. He changed the conditions. They asked for software. He offered outputs. They asked for component geometry. He gave performance envelopes. Each side moved 1 inch and called it strategy. The truck ran cold soak starts at 10 degrees below zero. It pulled loads through the indoor-grade tunnel. It supplied power to machine tools for 6 hours while maintaining cabin heat. It accepted rapid charge without the temperature spikes Halcyon's own packs produced. The results reached people who had not been invited to see them. Engineers began appearing in Bay 17 during breaks. They stood at the edge of the yellow line and asked Q questions they did not put in email. How are you balancing flow without variable pumps? The channels change state before the pumps need to, Elias said. How? Material choice. Which material? A useful one. They groaned. He did not mind. Moira visited every afternoon. She never asked Elias to forgive Halcyon. That was one reason he allowed her near the truck. She spoke about Lena in specific ways. The orange she peeled during late reviews. The way she wrote equations on paper towels when whiteboards were full. The habit she had of tapping a pencil against her front tooth when someone used the word impossible carelessly. She called me the night security removed her, Moira said one evening. Elias was fitting external sensors to the truck's frame. She called many people. I did not answer. He stopped working. Moira looked through the open bay door toward the darkening plant. I was in a meeting with Adrian and legal. My phone was face down. I saw her name. I thought I would call when the meeting ended. By then, her number had been blocked from company devices. I told myself I would go to her house. Then I told myself I should wait until the investigation was complete. Then the report came. And you believed it? I believed enough of it to be ashamed. Elias turned the wrench once more. Shame is not evidence. No, it is just heavy. He looked at her. Moira touched the edge of the work table. Lena deserved one person inside this building to walk out with her. I did not. Elias returned to the sensor clamp. She was angry with you, he said. Moira closed her eyes. For a long time, then she was not. She said fear makes ordinary people look cruel from a distance. That sounds like her. It does not mean she thought you were right. Moira gave a small, broken laugh. That also sounds like her. On the 9th day, June's school closed early because a boiler line burst. Elias's sister was working. The neighbor who sometimes helped had the flu. He called Theo from the school parking lot and said he would lose the afternoon. Bring her to the visitor office, Theo said. She can sit behind the glass. The contract says no controlled areas. The visitor office is not controlled. It contains a dead printer and 6 chairs no one wants. June arrived with a backpack, 2 library books, and a paperback of crackers. She sat in the visitor office for 20 minutes before deciding the chairs were a design failure. Then she moved to the window overlooking Bay 17 and watched engineers circle the truck. Vivian found her there. Elias was beneath the lift and did not see the CEO enter. June did. You are the woman who laughed, she said. Vivian stopped. Through the glass, Theo looked down at his tablet with great concentration. I did laugh, Vivian said. Dad says people laugh when something surprises them. Your father is generous. He's not generous about the truck. Vivian looked through the window at the faded blue body suspended above the inspection lane. He has reason not to be. June opened one of her books. Mom built the underneath part. I know. Did you know her? Vivian sat in the chair across from June. It was the first time Elias had seen her sit anywhere that was not at the head of a table. Not well, she said. I knew who she was. That is what Dad said about the man at the desk. Knowing a name is different from knowing a person. Vivian looked at June carefully. Your father says many precise things. He fixes machines? Does he fix everything? June considered the question. No. He keeps the broken things that still work. Something in Vivian's face loosened. June reached into her backpack and took out a brass star. This one has a long point. It is not as good. It looks good to me. That is because you do not make them. Vivian took the star when June offered it. On the back were the words useful before beautiful, punched unevenly into the metal. Who wrote this? She asked. Mom said it. Dee says it when I get mad, that a star is crooked. Vivian turned the piece in her fingers. Your mother said that in design reviews, too. June's eyes lifted. You heard her? Once? She was arguing with 6 men about a cooling plate. Did she win? Vivian looked through the glass at Elias. Not that day. June nodded as if losing a day did not settle the question. When Elias came out from beneath the lift, he saw Vivian standing at the visitor office door with the brass star in her hand. June, he said, I stayed outside the yellow line. That is not the only rule in the world. Vivian held out the star. She gave me this. It was the one with the bad point, June said. June? She said it was not as good, Vivian explained. It is still useful, June said. Elias took the star, but Vivian's fingers remained on it for one moment longer than necessary. I need to see the system under real road conditions, she said. Halcyon has dynamometers. Halcyon dynamometers do not have potholes, road salt, delivery traffic, or drivers who ignore warning lights for 6 months. Elias looked at her. You want to ride in the truck? I want to evaluate the truck. Those sound similar from the passenger seat. June looked between them. The seatbelt sticks. You have to pull it slowly. Vivian's mouth almost curved again. The road test began at 6 the next morning. Vivian arrived alone in a black company sedan. No Kessler, no communications team. She wore jeans beneath a wool coat and carried a tablet in a plain canvas case. Elias unlocked the passenger door. She looked at the torn bench seat, the manual window crank, and the narrow strip of duct tape holding one corner of the heater vent. This vehicle passed inspection. You asked that already. I remain unconvinced. Pull the belt slowly. She did. It stuck halfway. Elias waited. Vivian pulled again, slower. The belt extended. A system that rewards patience, she said. Halcyon should study it. She gave him a look and buckled in. They left the campus before sunrise. The truck moved silently through Riverton's warehouse district, past loading docks and rail crossings, then onto roads roughened by years of freeze and repair. Vivian watched the thermal data mirrored to her tablet. Pack temperatures stayed within 2 degrees. Regeneration increased on downhill grades. Cabin heat drew from stored thermal energy instead of the main pack. Your usable range numbers are real, she said after 40 minutes. Yes, the system is at least 4 years ahead of our current architecture. Lena was 4 years ahead 4 years ago. You make every observation sound like an accusation. Some observations arrive that way. They drove in silence. At the edge of town, Elias turned onto a narrow road beside the river. The old stamping plant stood dark on the opposite bank. Broken windows reflected the first pale light. Vivian looked at them. My father used to bring me here. To abandoned factories? They were not abandoned then. Halcyon bought castings from 3 of them. He believed every part should be made within a day's drive of the assembly line. That is expensive. He said dependency was more expensive. He was right. Her eyes stayed on the river. He was right about many things. It did not save the company from becoming what it is. Elias glanced at her. What is it? A company with 9,000 employees, a recall that could reach $12 billion, and a board preparing to sell us to Crownbridge Capital before the next quarterly call. The statement came flat. No drama. That made it heavier. Why? Tell me, he asked. Because your system may be the only thing on this road capable of changing that outcome. And because Adrian already knows it. The truck crossed a patch of broken pavement without slowing. Then he will come for it, Elias said. He will call it ours first. It is not. That has never stopped a corporation from making the claim. He looked at her again. Why? Oh, sound almost honest? Do not get used to it. For the first time, Vivian smiled fully. It changed her face more than Elias expected. Not because it made her softer, but because it made the tiredness visible. The smile disappeared as quickly as it came. I signed the report that ended Lena's career, she said. Elias's hands tightened on the wheel. You said that at the test court. I did not understand what it meant then. I was 31. My father had just undergone heart surgery. Adrian was running operations. Legal gave me a 6-page executive summary stating an engineer had bypassed safety controls and caused a fire. I signed it between 2 financing calls. That is supposed to make it better. No. The answer stopped him. Vivian looked at the black display on the dashboard. I have signed thousands of pages. Most of them moved money or authority from one box to another. That page moved a person's life. I did not know the difference because I did not look long enough. The truck hummed along the river road. Elias thought of Lena at their kitchen table, reading the termination letter twice, then folding it into perfect thirds. She had not cried that night. She had cleaned the refrigerator. Grief sometimes entered through strange doors. She spent 2 years trying to clear her name, he said. Every attorney told us Halcyon could outlast us. Then she died, and the company treated the silence as proof it had been right. Vivian said nothing. You do not get credit for noticing now. He continued. I know, and I am not bringing Lattice 9 into Halcyon so you can put your father's name on it. Then why did you come? Elias looked at the road ahead. Because June was right. The system can help people. And because I am tired of hiding the best thing Lena built inside the worst-looking truck in Michigan. Vivian glanced around the cabin. Worst-looking may be competitive. He almost laughed. Almost. They returned to Halcyon after 8. As Elias turned through the employee gate, Vivian reached toward the ignition and touched the brass star with one finger. Useful before beautiful, she said. That was Lena's rule. It may be the only rule Halcyon forgot completely. At the security barrier, Adrian Kessler was waiting. He stood beside 2 corporate attorneys and a uniformed officer from Halcyon Security. In his hand was a sealed envelope. Vivian saw them before Elias stopped. Do not open the bed, she said. I was not planning to. Kessler approached the driver's window. Elias Mercer, he said, Halcyon Motors is placing you on notice of suspected trade secret misappropriation. Effective immediately. All testing is suspended. You are prohibited from removing potentially disputed technology from company property until a court determines ownership. Elias looked at the gate behind him. It had already lowered. Elias kept both hands on the wheel. Open the gate. Kessler held the envelope through the window. You have been served with a preservation order. A preservation order is not a seizure order. One of the attorneys glanced at the other. Kessler's expression did not change. You may leave on foot. The vehicle remains pending inspection. Vivian opened the passenger door and stepped out. Who authorized this? The Executive Risk Committee. I chair the Executive Risk Committee. You recused yourself when you entered a private road test with the claimant. I did no such thing. Kessler handed her a second envelope. The board's special committee did it for you. Vivian tore the seal and read. Her face remained still, but the paper tightened in her hand. Elias looked toward the security booth. 2 more guards had moved into view. They were not reaching for weapons. They did not need to. Gates and paperwork were enough. My contract states that I retain possession of the vehicle, he said. Dana Ruiz, Halcyon's general counsel, came through the pedestrian gate at a fast walk. She carried no coat and seemed angry above Ute more than the cold. It does, she said. The order does not transfer possession. It prevents removal of disputed evidence from the jurisdiction. The jurisdiction is Michigan, not this parking lot. Correct. Kessler turned to her. Dana. Do not say my name as if it changes the document. She looked at Elias. You may remove the truck if you agree in writing not to alter, open, test, sell, or relocate the disputed system until the hearing. When is the hearing? 10 business days. 10 business days was half the review period. It was also 12 days before the bank's deadline on Mercer Machine Works. Kessler knew it. Elias could see that he knew. And if I do not sign, Halcyon will seek emergency custody of the vehicle before the end of the day, Dana said. The court may grant it. May. I do not lie about courts, Mr. Mercer. No one controls them as completely as they claim. Vivian lowered the paper. Withdraw the filing. Kessler looked at her. You're not authorized to direct legal strategy on a matter in which the board has found a conflict. The board found a conflict 12 minutes after I left campus. The evidence changed. The evidence is that the system works. The evidence is that a former employee's spouse brought technology onto our property that substantially overlaps Halcyon research. You allowed him access to facilities, data, and personnel without a complete provenance review. Crownbridge's diligence team discovered it before you informed the board. Vivian went still. You told Crownbridge. We are under a disclosure obligation. The sale has not been approved. The board authorized diligence, not disclosure of independent technology. Kessler's voice lowered. There is no independent technology until ownership is established. Elias listened to the argument and understood the shape of it. Kessler had built a box with 2 doors. If Lattice 9 belonged to Halcyon, it increased the company's sale value. If it did not, the lawsuit delayed Elias long enough to break him. Either outcome served Crownbridge. Elias took the envelope. I will sign the preservation agreement if the truck goes to my shop and the court appoints an independent monitor. No Halcyon employee touches it. Kessler shook his head. Unacceptable. Then ask the court for custody and explain why the company that buried Lena's work needs private access before a hearing. Dana looked at him, then at Kessler. His proposal is reasonable, she said. Your role is to protect Halcyon. My role is to advise Halcyon on the law. Those are not always the same sentence. Vivian folded the special committee notice and placed it in her coat pocket. Draft the agreement, she said. Kessler's jaw tightened. You cannot instruct her. Then consider it a request from a conflicted chief executive who still owns 17% of the company. The gate opened 47 minutes later. Elias drove out with the court monitor's seal across the false bed, another across the panel behind the seat, and a document on the dashboard forbidding him from using the one machine that could save his shop. Vivian remained behind the barrier. As the truck passed, June's brass star swung from the key and caught a line of morning sun. Elias did not look back. The news broke before noon. Local inventor accused of stealing Halcyon battery technology. The first article used a photograph of the old truck leaving the campus. The angle made the rust look darker and the primer gray door look almost comic. A second article quoted an unnamed company source describing Elias as a disgruntled family member of a terminated employee. A third mentioned Lena by name and repeated the official conclusion of the North Annex fire investigation. By 2 of Mercer Machine Works' remaining customers had canceled orders. By 4, the bank called. Mr. Mercer, the loan officer said, we have become aware of pending litigation that may affect the collateral and your ability to cure the default. The litigation has not been filed. Halcyon requested a preservation order. Our concern is risk exposure. Your concern was $21,000 this morning. The amount remains due. Given the change in circumstances, we cannot extend the cure period. You never extended it. Then the current deadline remains appropriate. Calm language. Always calm. June came into the office after school and found Elias sitting at the desk with the phone still in his hand. Is the truck in trouble? She asked. He set the phone down. The truck is fine. Are we in trouble? Elias looked through the office glass at the shop floor. Snow melt had begun dripping into the first bucket. We have a difficult week. That means, yes, it means I'm working on it. She took off her backpack and sat in the chair opposite him. Did the woman who laughed do this? No. Did the man at the gate? Part of it. Can she tell him to stop? Elias thought of Vivian behind the barrier, special committee notice in her pocket. Maybe not. June frowned. She is the CEO. Titles are not the same as power. Then why do people want them? That is an excellent question. She reached into her backpack and took out another brass star. This one was smaller than the rest, no larger than a coin. I made it for her, June said. Why? Because she looked like she forgot Mom's rule. Elias turned the star over. The words on the back were not Lena's. Look closer. June had punched the letters unevenly, running out of room near the edge. I do not think she will be visiting, he said. June set the star on the desk. Then you can give it to her when she does. Vivian arrived at 8:20 that night. No sedan, no driver. She came in a dark rental car with road salt along the doors and parked beside the old truck. Snow had begun falling again, fine and dry beneath the security light. Elias saw her through the shop window and considered not opening the door. Then she knocked. Not loudly. Once. He let her in. She looked around Mercer Machine Works without pretending not to notice the buckets, the cold, or the empty machine stations. Her eyes stopped on the old photographs along the wall. Elias's grandfather beside the first lathe, his father holding a Union picnic trophy, Lena in safety glasses with her hands, black from graphite. June at 4, sitting inside a cardboard rocket. The article did not come from my office, Vivian said. It came from your company. Yes. Then the distinction is useful to you, not me. She accepted that without argument. Dana traced the language to an outside crisis firm retained by Adrian's committee. I ordered Halcyon Communications to issue a correction. The committee blocked it. You came to tell me you tried. No. I came because the board meets tomorrow morning to suspend me from operational authority pending the Crownbridge vote. Elias leaned against the workbench. And you want the truck to save your job. I want the truth before Adrian sells the company. Those may be the same thing. They are not. You told me titles are not power without saying the words. Now you are standing in my shop because you may lose yours. It looks similar from here. Vivian glanced toward the truck. Court seals crossed the hidden panels in red tape. The board believes Lattice 9 belongs to Halcyon, she said. Crownbridge believes it too. They increased the preliminary offer this afternoon by $600 million. Elias stared at her. For a system they have not seen? For the possibility of owning it? That is not investment. It is theft with a spreadsheet. Yes. The word landed between them. Vivian took off her gloves. Her right hand was trembling slightly. Not from cold. Elias had seen the movement once before at the test court, when the transformer exploded. She closed her fingers until it stopped. What happened in the North Annex? He asked. Her gaze moved to his. You read the report. I read a AR report about Lena. I am asking about you. Vivian stood very still. Then she walked to the old wooden chair near the welding table and sat. I was there, she said. Her voice became flat, almost without tone. The fire began in Pack Room 3 during a demonstration for a city fleet contract. Lena had objected to the test because the software interlock showed an unexplained override. Adrian said the display was a sensor fault and ordered the run. My father was in the observation booth. I was on the floor with 2 engineers. The pack vented before the alarm. There was a sound like metal tearing underwater. Then white smoke covered the room. The emergency doors dropped. One technician fell near the test rack. I could see him moving, but I could not move toward him. I stood there. Adrian came through the side door, pulled me behind a barrier, and dragged the technician out with Theo Bell. The burns on my hand were minor. The technician recovered. Everyone called Adrian decisive. My father called him the reason no one died. Lena said the interlock had been disabled from the operations console. Adrian said she had bypassed it to prove her design was necessary. The logs delivered to legal showed her credentials. I signed a summary. 3 months later, I accepted his proposal. Elias said nothing. Vivian looked at her right hand. I believed him because he moved when I did not. That is the whole ugly shape of it. Gratitude became trust. Trust became authority. By the time I understood how often he used fear to decide for me, my father's health had failed. The board depended on Adrian, and Halcyon was already building the battery architecture Lena warned against. The shop furnace clicked, but did not start. Why did you end the engagement? Elias asked. I found a financing agreement he had negotiated without telling me. It gave Crownbridge an option on 3 plants if Halcyon missed certain safety targets. He called it protection. I called it a sale made in pieces. Did you fire him? The board would not allow it. He had delivered 8 profitable quarters. I had delivered a recall. There was no self-pity in the statement. Only arithmetic. Elias looked at the court seals on the truck. Lena knew someone had used her credentials, he said. She could not prove who. Can the system prove it? The system is not a witness. The notebooks? They prove, when she built Lattice 9, they do not prove who altered Halcyon's logs. Vivian's eyes narrowed slightly. Then why did Adrian move this fast? Because he recognizes more than the architecture. Elias walked to the truck and pointed through the rear window toward the bench seat. Lena installed an independent data recorder during the last month she worked at Halcyon. She did not trust the company's servers. It captured test inputs, controller states, and network handshakes from any rig connected to her diagnostic unit. She brought the unit home after they revoked her access. Part of that recorder is inside the truck. Vivian stood. It contains the North Annex logs. Maybe. The memory was damaged. I recovered thermal data and fragments of command history, but the authorization chain is corrupted. Lena believed the remaining blocks could be reconstructed if we had the original Halcyon time key table. Those tables are archived offline. Who controls the archive? Operations Security. Adrian. Elias nodded. Then he knows exactly why he wants the truck. Vivian walked closer to the old pickup. Can he access the recorder without opening the sealed panel? No. Can you? Not without violating the order. What if the court appoints a forensic examiner? In 10 business days, after the board vote. Vivian looked at the seals, then at the shop around them. How long do you have? For what? The building. Elias's silence answered. She saw the foreclosure notice on the office desk. He had left it face down, but the bank's red header showed at the edge. How long? She repeated. 12 days. I can lend you the amount. Personally. No claim on the system. No, you did not hear the terms. I heard the source. My money is not Halcyon's. Your money came from Halcyon. Her face hardened. Pride is expensive, Mr. Mercer. So is dependence on someone who can change the terms after you need them. I am not Adrian. I do not know you well enough to know what you are. The words hurt her. Elias saw it. He did not take them back. The side door opened and June stepped in from the small apartment above the office. She wore pajamas beneath her coat and carried a blanket around her shoulders. Dad, you should be asleep. The car woke me. She saw Vivian and stopped. You came? Vivian's expression changed. I did. June crossed to the desk, picked up the small brass star, and carried it over. This is for you. Vivian accepted it. Look closer. She read. You looked at the truck again, June said. But you have to look at the people too. Elias closed his eyes briefly. June? It is true. Vivian turned the star in her hand. It is. June studied her. Are you going to help Dad? The question entered the room without respect for contracts, boards, or fear. Vivian did not answer quickly. I am going to try to make something right, she said. June frowned. That is not the same. No, Vivian said. It is not. She closed her fingers around the star. The next morning, Halcyon's board suspended Vivian from operational authority by a vote of 9-3. Adrian Kessler became acting executive lead for the Crown Bridge transaction. At 10:15, Halcyon terminated Elias's technical review for cause, claiming failure to disclose disputed intellectual property. At 11, the company filed suit. At 1:30, a county deputy and 2 independent evidence custodians arrived at Mercer Machine Works with a court order authorizing removal of the truck to a neutral storage facility. Dana Ruiz came with them. I argued for the shop monitor, she told Elias quietly. The judge found the publicity increased tampering risk. Publicity your company created? Yes. The custodians photographed every seal, every wheel, every scratch. They winched the old truck onto a flatbed because the order prohibited operation. June stood beside Elias in her red coat and watched the tires leave the concrete floor. They are taking Mom's work, she said. For now? You always say for now when you do not know. He put one hand on her shoulder. The flatbed pulled away. At 3, the bank posted a notice of accelerated foreclosure on the shop door. At 4, the power company disconnected service for the overdue commercial account. The furnace stopped. The lights went out. The one working lathe became a dark shape beneath the windows. Elias stood in the center of the shop with June beside him and listened to the building cool. For the first time since Lena died, he could not find the next thing to fix. Across town, Vivian sat alone in the office that still carried the title of chief executive and no longer carried its power. On the screen before her, Crownbridge Capital's acquisition presentation moved through numbers, redundancies, asset sales, and plant consolidation. 3,000 jobs would be eliminated in the first year. Mercer Machine Works appeared in an appendix under potential disputed technology claims. Vivian closed the file. The small brass star lay beside her keyboard. Look closer. She turned it over once. Then she picked up the phone and called Moira Chen. Moira answered on the second ring. I was waiting, she said. Vivian looked at the dark windows of her office. For what? For you to decide whether losing authority meant losing responsibility. Do you have the North Annex time key table? A pause. No. Can you get it? Not from Halcyon. Adrian moved the archive under operations security after the fire. Vivian closed her hand around June's brass star. Then where? Moira thought for several seconds. The eye? Sure, she said. Every controller authorization key used in a safety incident was hashed and attached to the loss review. Not the full table, but enough to verify a command chain. Halcyon's Ensure would have kept the original submission. Can we request it? You cannot. You are a named executive in pending litigation. Dana might, through discovery. Discovery will take months, unless the disputed evidence is degrading. Vivian looked toward the battery campus below. Snow had begun covering the test court where the old truck had powered open the doors. The recorder is damaged, she said. Exactly. At 8 the next morning, Dana Ruiz filed an emergency motion for a joint forensic examination of the truck and third-party production of the insurer's North Annex records. She filed it in Halcyon's name, then attached a declaration stating that delay could permanently destroy evidence relevant to both parties. Adrian tried to withdraw the motion. Dana informed him that the general counsel represented the corporation, not its acting executive, and that suppressing potentially exculpatory evidence would violate her duty to the court. At noon, the special committee placed her on administrative leave. At 12:10, she emailed the court from her personal phone and confirmed the filing remained authorized when made. By 5, the judge scheduled a hearing for the following morning. Elias learned about it from Vivian, who came to the dark shop carrying 2 battery lanterns and a paper bag of food. The utility company still has not restored service, she said. They generally wait for payment. I brought light. I noticed. She set one lantern on the office desk and one on the workbench. Warm circles opened in the darkness. June came down from the apartment wearing 2 sweaters. It looks like camping. Camping usually has trees, Elias said. And marshmallows. Vivian lifted the paper bag. I brought soup. June considered her. That counts. They ate at the workbench from cardboard bowls. Snow pressed against the high shop windows. Without the machines running, the building made old sounds Elias had forgotten. Pipes ticking, wind moving under the eaves, the slow creak of roof trusses settling into cold. Vivian explained the hearing. If the judge agrees, the truck will be opened tomorrow afternoon at the neutral facility. Halcyon, your counsel, and an independent examiner will be present. The insurer has located a sealed North Annex archive box. I do not have counsel, Elias said. Dana will represent neither side now. She gave me the name of an intellectual property attorney willing to appear for a reduced retainer. Reduced to what? Vivian looked at him. 0 until the ownership ruling? Why? Because Dana asked. And because your case may matter beyond you. Elias did not like owing strangers. He liked losing the truck less. Give me the name, he said. June dipped a cracker into her soup. What happens if the box proves Mom was right? Neither adult answered immediately. Vivian set down her spoon. Then I say, so where everyone can hear it. Even if your company gets in trouble? Especially then. June looked at Elias. Is that helping or making it right? Elias met Vivian's eyes. We will see, he said. The hearing lasted 40 minutes. The judge was a woman with silver hair and no patience for theatrical outrage. She read the preservation agreement, Halcyon's ownership claim, Dana's declaration, and the insurer's confirmation that archived authentication records existed. The vehicle will be examined at 2, she said. No destructive testing, no duplication beyond evidence imaging. Any party that interferes with access will answer to me personally. Adrian's attorney rose. Your Honor, Halcyon objects to disclosure of confidential security architecture to an outside claimant. Halcyon filed a claim that makes the architecture relevant. It cannot waive confidentiality with one hand and ownership with the other. Sit down. Elias liked her immediately. The neutral storage facility occupied a windowless building near the county airport. The old truck sat inside a white examination room under bright lights. Court seals remained intact. Elias walked around it once before touching anything. The truck looked wrong indoors, too familiar for the room, too honest. June was not allowed inside, so Moira stayed with her behind the observation glass. Vivian stood near the examiner's table. Adrian and 2 Halcyon attorneys occupied the opposite side. The independent examiner, Dr. Samuel Ortiz, recorded the condition of each seal. He spoke in a calm voice and named every action before taking it. Mr. Mercer, you may release the bed compartment. Elias inserted the mechanical key beneath the left rail and turned it twice. 4 locks withdrew. The false bed lifted. Even under white forensic lights, Lattice 9 looked unlike anything built for display. No polished cover, no logo. Ceramic channels ran around black modules and branching lines, each joint labeled by hand. The controller housing carried scratches from 3 years of road tests. A copper strip near the rear had been repaired with 2 different alloys because that was what Elias had available on a Sunday night in January. Useful before beautiful. Dr. Ortiz leaned closer without touching. The system architecture is integrated into the vehicle frame. Yes, Elias said. Removal would require partial disassembly. Yes. Adrian spoke to his attorney in a whisper. Vivian watched the open bed with an expression Elias could not read. Wonder and regret sometimes wore the same face. The examiner photographed every layer. He scanned component markings, collected surface samples, and connected an isolated reader to the diagnostic port. Then he moved to the panel behind the bench seat. This contains the data recorder. Part of it. What does that mean? The primary memory core is behind the panel. The analog timing reference is elsewhere. Adrian looked up. That was not disclosed. Elias turned toward him. You did not ask me. The judge's order allowed access to evidence relevant to provenance. Dr. Ortiz opened the rear panel. Inside, beneath shielded wiring, sat a black recorder the size of a paperback book. One corner was darkened from heat damage. This unit was exposed to fire, he said. North Annex, Elias replied. Lena recovered it from the test rack after the incident. One of Halcyon's attorneys objected. Halcyon equipment cannot lawfully have left the premises. Then your company may explain why security listed it as destroyed, Elias said. Dr. Ortiz lifted one hand. Arguments later. Evidence now. Mr. Mercer, where is the timing reference? Elias reached through the open driver's window and pressed the trip reset knob inward, then turned it counterclockwise past the point where an ordinary knob would stop. The chrome ring around the old odometer released. Behind it was a narrow spool of ceramic film wound around a brass core. Moira covered her mouth behind the glass. Vivian stepped closer. Inside the odometer, she said. Lena did not trust digital clocks after the test network was altered, Elias replied. The film records pulse intervals mechanically. It cannot tell us who sent a command. It can tell us when the recorder received it, even if the system clock was changed later. Dr. Ortiz removed the spool with insulated tools. Adrian's face remained composed. His left thumb rubbed once against the side of his index finger. Elias remembered Lena describing that habit after difficult meetings. He polishes invisible edges when he lies, she had said. The insurer's archive arrived in a sealed gray case. Inside were printed controller tables, signed hashes, incident photographs, and a copy of the raw authentication map submitted by Halcyon 4 years earlier. Dr. Ortiz worked for 3 hours. He imaged the damaged recorder. He aligned surviving command fragments with the analog pulse, F, ILM. He compared each authorization hash against the insurer's table. At 5:30, he stopped and removed his glasses. I have a preliminary match. No one in the room moved. The command disabling the thermal interlock was issued at 14 hours, 8 minutes, and 17 seconds from Operations Console 03. The recorder's internal clock was later shifted by 11 minutes and 42 seconds. The analog timing reference confirms the original command time. According to the insurer's submitted key table, the active authorization token, assigned to Console 03 at that time, belonged to Adrian Kessler. One of the attorneys began speaking. Dr. Ortiz raised his hand. That does not establish who physically entered the command. It establishes whose token authorized it. Adrian's voice was calm. Shared credentials were common in the test wing then. The company changed policy after the incident. Theo Bell, who had been allowed into the observation room as a witness, struck the glass with the heel of his hand. That is a lie, he said. Everyone turned. Theo came through the observation door before anyone could stop him. We used badge and biometric authorization on 03. 2 factors. No shared access. You told us the console log was destroyed. Adrian looked at him. You are not part of this examination. I dragged a burn technician across that floor while you stood in the clean corridor telling security to lock Lena out. I am part of it. The room tightened. Dr. Ortiz restored order and continued. The notebooks established that Lena's first lattice concept predated her assignment to Halcyon's PAC program by 11 months. Material receipts from Mercer Machine Works matched early prototypes. Later pages showed improvements based on home testing after her termination. Halcyon owned certain narrow work-for-hire developments from her employment period. It did not own the architecture as a whole. By 7, the shape of the truth was no longer hidden. Lena had been right. Adrian had authorized the disabled interlock, altered the system time after the fire, and allowed a report to place responsibility on her. Then he had used elements of her internal proposal in Halcyon's next battery platform without adopting the ceramic routing that made it safe. He had taken the appearance of her work and removed the part that worked. Dr. Ortiz sealed the evidence copies. Adrian left without looking at Vivian. The old truck remained in neutral storage pending the court's formal ruling, but the judge lifted the non-use order that evening under supervised conditions. Elias could operate it for testing as long as Dr. Ortiz's monitor remained attached. That should have felt like victory. It did not restore power to the shop. It did not stop foreclosure. It did not reverse the news articles already traveling farther than corrections ever did. It did not return 3 years to Lena. Outside the facility, snow had stopped. June ran to Elias and wrapped both arms around his waist. Was Mom right? He held her. Yes. Did they say it? Elias looked toward Vivian. She stood several steps away, holding the small brass star in one hand. They said it? Vivian answered. June nodded against Elias's coat. Good. No cheering. No speech. Just good. The court released the truck to Elias the next morning. He drove it back to Mercer Machine Works and parked inside a building with no electricity. The bank's notice remained on the door. A new deadline had been added in black marker by the process server. 7 days. Halcyon's shareholder vote on the Crownbridge sale was also 7 days away. Vivian arrived an hour later with Moira, Theo, Dana, and 6 Halcyon engineers who had taken personal leave. Elias looked at the group, filling his doorway. What is this? Theo held up a portable work light. A very badly organized rebellion. Moira carried 2 boxes of material samples. Dana had a folding table and a printer that ran from a battery pack. The engineers brought tool cases, thermal cameras, and 1 Kershaw generator mounted on a trailer. Vivian came last. The evidence can stop Halcyon's claim, she said. It may remove Adrian. It will not stop the sale. The board will say one executive acted improperly, and Crownbridge remains the only path through the recall. What do you want from me? A second system. Elias looked at the old truck. Lattice 9 took 4 years. The architecture exists. We need a scalable module installed in a fleet pack before the vote. Something independent buyers can price. Something the board cannot bury inside a legal dispute. In 7 days? 6.5. In a shop without power. Theo connected the generator cable to the service panel. Lights flickered on above the welding table. Some power, he said. Elias looked at the engineers. You work for Halcyon. A young woman named Priya Nand stepped forward. She had challenged his range claims on the first day. For now, she said, Crownbridge plans to close our pack development group. We would rather build the thing that keeps it open. Halcyon may fire you. Halcyon is already preparing to... Vivian placed a document on the folding table. I formed an independent company this morning. Lantern Works. The name is temporary. June came down the shop stairs and looked at the battery lantern still sitting on the desk. It is a good name, she said. Vivian glanced at her. Then it can stay. Elias opened the document. Lantern Works was structured as a public benefit engineering company. Elias held 40%. Vivian held 25%. 15% was reserved for Lena's estate in trust for June. 20% formed an employee pool for workers who built the system. No founder could sell controlling interest without approval from all 4 groups. All safety data would be independently published. You wrote this overnight, Elias said. Dana wrote it. I argued with her. Dana set up the printer. She lost several times. Where does the money come from? Vivian handed him a second page. I am purchasing newly issued shares at a valuation certified by an outside accountant. The capital pays the shop's overdue utilities, materials, legal expenses, and a 90-day mortgage cure. It is not a loan. It gives me no claim beyond the percentage listed. Elias stared at the numbers. This valuation is too high. It is based on the independent performance report from Dr. Ortiz and a conditional fleet order Moira obtained this morning. Moira lifted one hand. Riverton Municipal Services will purchase 10 retrofit modules if the supervised test meets safety and range targets. They remember which truck opened Halcyon's doors. You built terms before asking me. Vivian met his eyes. You would have rejected charity. So I brought a business. June stood beside the table, reading only the large words. Does this mean we keep the shop? Elias looked at the foreclosure notice, at the dark machines, at Lena's photographs on the wall, at Vivian, who had placed her own money and name into a structure she could not control. It means we have work to do, he said. He signed. Lantern works began beneath portable lights. The first day was measurement. The second was failure. They chose a commercial fleet pack from a Riverton snow service vehicle, a rectangular unit built for low speed, heavy load, and long idle periods. It had enough room for a scaled lattice module and enough flaws to make the test honest. Elias refused to copy the truck exactly. The truck is a prototype shaped by every mistake we made. He told the team, if we build the mistakes into the product, we are preserving history instead of learning from it. Priya redesigned the channel geometry. Moira selected a ceramic composite that could be manufactured with existing presses. Theo built fixtures from scrap steel. Vivian handled suppliers who stopped returning calls when Halcyon threatened them, then found smaller companies willing to sell material in cash quantities. She worked at the Foldy NG table during the day and on the shop floor at night. The first time a battery module vented during a bench test, the sound was small. A sharp hiss beneath the hood. Vivian froze. Her right hand began to tremble. Everyone else moved back, according to procedure. Elias shut down the test and engaged the capture hood. The vent was controlled. No fire, no danger. Still, Vivian stood near the wall with her eyes fixed on the module. Elias walked toward her but stopped several feet away. The room is safe, he said. I know. The vent is contained. I know. You do not have to stay. Her eyes moved to him. It was the wrong sentence. Or perhaps the right one. Vivian took one slow breath, then another. She picked up her safety glasses from the workbench and put them back on. Show me why it vented, she said. Elias did. She remained beside the test table until they found the cause, a seal compressed unevenly by a fixture. Theo had machined 1/100th of an inch out of square. Theo remade it. The next test held. No one congratulated Vivian for staying. That mattered. By the third night, the shop had become warm for machines, bodies, and work. Someone brought a coffee maker. Someone else brought folding cots. June labeled drawers with handwritten cards. Because the engineers kept putting tools in places Elias considered wrong. Vivian slept for 2 hours in the office chair and woke with a crease across her cheek. Elias found her at dawn, staring at Lena's photograph beside the lathe. She looks happy, Vivian said. She was arguing with a thermocouple. That made her happy. Sometimes, Vivian touched the edge of the frame, not the glass. I keep thinking about the page I signed. Thinking does not change it. No, but it may change the next page. She looked at him. The shop was quiet around them. June slept upstairs. The engineers had gone for breakfast. Snow filled the high windows. Why are you less angry now? Vivian asked. I am not. You are. Elias leaned against the lathe. Anger is useful when it points somewhere. For 3 years, mine pointed at a building. Now it has names and dates. That makes it smaller. Adrian. Adrian. Aboard? You? Me? You? I let Lena fight alone longer than I should have. I was trying to save the shop. She was trying to save the work. We both thought the other problem could wait. Vivian looked at him with the quiet attention she rarely gave anyone. She knew you believed her, she said. Belief is not the same as standing beside someone where it cost you. The words belonged to both of them. For a moment, neither looked away. Then June's voice came from the stairs. Are you two fighting? They stepped apart, though they had not been touching. June descended in socks, hair flattened on one side. No, Elias said. You look like you are fighting quietly. Vivian picked up a pencil from the table. We were talking. June looked at the documents, the half-built module, and the lanterns hanging from hooks. Are you Dad's boss now? No. Is he your boss? Also no. Then what are you? Vivian opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Elias said, Partners. June considered the word. Partners stay when the thing breaks, she said. Good partners do, Elias replied. She nodded toward Vivian. Then you have to stay after the vote too, not just until your company is fixed. The room went still. Children said the unsayable because they did not yet know which truths adults had agreed to leave unnamed. Vivian looked at Elias. If he wants me to, she said. Elias felt the answer before he gave it. Finish the module, he said. June sighed. That is not an answer. It is the answer available before breakfast. Adults make everything take too long. She went to find cereal. Vivian lowered her eyes, but Elias saw the smile. On the 4th day, the module passed its first full thermal cycle. On the 5th, it failed on the rapid charge. A ceramic junction cracked, sending temperature in one corner of the pack 6 degrees above the rest. Within Halcyon's old tolerance, the test would have passed. Elias stopped it. 6 degrees is recoverable, Priya argued. We can correct in software. Lena said that about version 6. Elias replied, Software can hide a bad path until the worst day. We fix the path. We have 36 hours. Then we have 36 hours to do it, right? Vivian watched the exchange. Old Halcyon would have moved the tolerance. Adrian would have called the deviation non-critical, placed a footnote in a report, and protected the schedule. Vivian walked to the whiteboard and erased the test deadline. No vote is worth another false pass, she said. Fix the path. Priya looked at her, then nodded. They changed the junction shape, rebuilt the ceramic insert, and tested again at midnight. Temperatures held within 1.8 degrees. At 2 in the morning, the team applauded once, tired and surprised. Theo opened a box of grocery store donuts. June woke upstairs and came down because she heard voices. She ate half a chocolate one and fell asleep at the work table with her head on Elias's folded jacket. Vivian carried her upstairs. Elias followed with the blanket. In the small apartment, Vivian placed June on the bed with a care that made her seem uncertain where each hand belonged. June opened her eyes long enough to touch the brass star hanging from Vivian's neck. Vivian had threaded the small piece onto a plain chain. You kept it, June murmured. I needed the reminder. Do you look closer now? Vivian glanced toward Elias in the doorway. I am trying. June closed her eyes. Downstairs, the shop had gone quiet again. Snow tapped lightly against the windows. The new lattice module rested beneath test lights, compact and plain. Vivian stood near the bottom of the stairs. She trusts me, she said. June trusts directly. It is efficient. You do not? Not efficiently. She almost smiled. What would it take? Elias looked at the woman who had laughed at his truck, then challenged her own board, opened evidence against her company, and spent 5 nights beneath a leaking roof building a system that might remove her from Halcyon permanently. Time, he said. We have not had much of that. No. And after tomorrow is not here yet. Vivian stepped closer. You always answer the question beside the one I ask. The question you ask usually has a trap in it. This one does not. They stood close enough for Elias to see the pale line of an old burn near her wrist, close enough for Vivian to see the gray beginning at his temples. Neither moved. Then the shop phone rang. The sound broke, the moment cleanly. Elias answered. It was Dana. Adrian moved the shareholder vote forward. She said, Tomorrow, 9 in the morning. And Crownbridge has scheduled a press conference immediately after. They intend to announce the acquisition before your public test. Elias looked at the clock. 7 hours? Across the shop, the old truck waited beside the new module. Blue paint dull beneath the work lights. Vivian read the answer in his face. What happened? We lost a day. She looked toward the test rig. Then we stopped counting days. She said, We count what remains. The next 7 hours became a series of small decisions made too quickly to feel heroic. Theo mounted the finished lattice module into Riverton's electric snow service vehicle, a square white truck built to carry salt and push weight at low speed. Priya loaded the latest control map. Moira verified every material lot against the prototype record. Dana prepared 3 motions, 2 shareholder notices, and 1 letter to the State Transportation Safety Office. Elias worked on the old pickup. The court monitor still attached to its diagnostic port had begun dropping signal in the cold. He replaced the external cable without touching the evidence seals, checked the mechanical timing spool, and tested the emergency output. June sat on the pack 6 degrees above the rest. Within Halcyon's old tolerance, the test would have passed. Elias stopped it. 6 degrees is recoverable, Priya argued. We can correct in software. Lena said that about version 6. Elias replied, Software can hide a bad path until the worst day. We fix the path. We have 36 hours. Then we have 36 hours to do it, right? Vivian watched the exchange. Old Halcyon would have moved the tolerance. Adrian would have called the deviation non-critical, placed a footnote in a report, and protected the schedule. Vivian walked to the whiteboard and erased the test deadline. No vote is worth another false pass, she said. Fix the path. Priya looked at her, then nodded. They changed the junction shape, rebuilt the ceramic insert, and tested again at midnight. Temperatures held within 1.8 degrees. At 2 in the morning, the team applauded once, tired and surprised. Theo opened a box of grocery store donuts. June woke upstairs and came down because she heard voices. She ate half a chocolate one and fell asleep at the work table with her head on Elias's folded jacket. Vivian carried her upstairs. Elias followed with the blanket. In the small apartment, Vivian placed June on the bed with a care that made her seem uncertain where each hand belonged. June opened her eyes long enough to touch the brass star hanging from Vivian's neck. Vivian had threaded the small piece onto a plain chain. You kept it, June murmured. I needed the reminder. Do you look closer now? Vivian glanced toward Elias in the doorway. I am trying. June closed her eyes. Downstairs, the shop had gone quiet again. Snow tapped lightly against the windows. The new lattice module rested beneath test lights, compact and plain. Vivian stood near the bottom of the stairs. She trusts me, she said. June trusts directly. It is efficient. You do not? Not efficiently. She almost smiled. What would it take? Elias looked at the woman who had laughed at his truck, then challenged her own board, opened evidence against her company, and spent 5 nights beneath a leaking roof building a system that might remove her from Halcyon permanently. "Time," he said. "We have not had much of that. No. And after tomorrow is not here yet." Vivian stepped closer. "You always answer the question beside the one I ask. The question you ask usually has a trap in it. This one does not." They stood close enough for Elias to see the pale line of an old burn near her wrist, close enough for Vivian to see the gray beginning at his temples. Neither moved. Then the shop phone rang. The sound broke, the moment cleanly. Elias answered. It was Dana. Adrian moved the shareholder vote forward. She said, "Tomorrow, 9 in the morning. And Crownbridge has scheduled a press conference immediately after. They intend to announce the acquisition before your public test." Elias looked at the clock. 7 hours? Across the shop, the old truck waited beside the new module. Blue paint dull beneath the work lights. Vivian read the answer in his face. "What happened?" "We lost a day." She looked toward the test rig. "Then we stopped counting days." She said, "We count what remains." The next 7 hours became a series of small decisions made too quickly to feel heroic. Theo mounted the finished lattice module into Riverton's electric snow service vehicle, a square white truck built to carry salt and push weight at low speed. Priya loaded the latest control map. Moira verified every material lot against the prototype record. Dana prepared 3 motions, 2 shareholder notices, and 1 letter to the State Transportation Safety Office. Elias worked on the old pickup. The court monitor still attached to its diagnostic port had begun dropping signal in the cold. He replaced the external cable without touching the evidence seals, checked the mechanical timing spool, and tested the emergency output. June sat on the ear. Pike frowned. "Ms. Hale, you may have 5 minutes." Vivian walked to the podium. Adrian did not move at first. Then he stepped aside. She placed the forensic report on the lectern and looked out at the room. For years, she had spoken to shareholders in percentages and forecasts. That morning, she began with a name. Lena Mercer was a Halcyon Thermal Systems engineer, she said. 4 years ago, this company blamed her for a test fire she tried to prevent. I signed the report that carried that blame. The report was false. The room became silent. Vivian did not soften the words. She explained the disabled interlock, the altered system clock, the authorization token, and the independent timing record hidden inside Elias's old truck. She described Lattice 9, not as an asset Halcyon had discovered, but as work Halcyon had dismissed and then attempted to claim. The evidence indicates that Adrian Kessler authorized the command that disabled the safety interlock, she said. It also indicates that records were altered afterward. Mr. Kessler is entitled to legal process. He is not entitled to direct this company while that process occurs. Adrian stepped toward the podium. This is a grossly incomplete characterization of a preliminary report. Vivian turned to him. Then support an adjournment until the report is complete. He said nothing. She faced the shareholders again. Crownbridge's offer assumes Halcyon owns Lattice 9. The court has ruled that we do not. Their financing model also assumes closure of 3 plants and elimination of approximately 3,000 jobs. Those facts were not presented in today's summary. Murmurs spread across the room. Warren Pike struck the table with a wooden block. "Miss Hale, your 5 minutes are nearly complete." "Then I will use the last one on an alternative." The screen behind her changed. Priya had connected a laptop from the side aisle. A simple image appeared, the faded blue pickup beside the white municipal snow truck. "Lantern Works has completed a scalable lattice module," Vivian said. "Riverton has issued a conditional purchase order. 2 independent fleet operators signed letters of intent this morning. A regional credit union has offered manufacturing, finance, secured by those orders, not by Halcyon assets." Lantern will license safety architecture to Halcyon, under published terms, with independent testing and worker participation. The license revenue is sufficient to begin recall remediation without a sale. Adrian laughed once. The sound was colder than Vivian's laughter at the truck had been. A company formed 4 days ago and a failing machine shop is going to rescue Halcyon Motors. Elias felt June look up at him. Vivian did not answer from the podium. She looked toward Elias. He walked to the center aisle. "No," he said. "A company is not being rescued. A cooling system is being tested. People can decide what the results are worth." The board chair rubbed his forehead. "Tested where?" Carol Ames stood. "On your court first, on Riverton streets after. My department has a snow emergency beginning at noon. We will know by tonight whether the module is useful." One of the Crown Bridge representatives leaned toward Adrian and whispered urgently. Vivian looked at the board. "Delay the vote 3 hours. Watch the test, then decide whether selling the company is the only choice." The employee shareholders began standing. Not cheering, standing. One by one, small institutional holders requested adjournment. A pension fund representative asked whether Crown Bridge had been informed of the ownership ruling. A bank trustee asked for the plant closure schedule. Questions multiplied faster than Adrian could answer them. At 9:12, the board voted to postpone the acquisition decision until noon. At 9:14, it suspended Adrian Kessler from all duties pending investigation. He left the auditorium between 2 security officers. No handcuffs, no shouting. He simply walked out, beneath the same Halcyon logo he had planned to sell. The test court filled by 10. Snow covered the concrete in a thin white layer. Cameras lined the barrier. Dr. Ortiz supervised the old truck. State safety officials instrumented the new lattice module inside the municipal vehicle. The test had 3 stages. First, rapid charge in cold conditions. Halcyon's standard fleet pack developed a 9-degree temperature spread before reaching 70%. The lattice module held at 2.1. Second, maximum discharge under simulated plow load. The standard pack reduced power after 19 minutes. The lattice vehicle continued for 45, its hottest cell 4 degrees below Halcyon's cutoff. Third, fault containment. A controlled heater forced one module toward thermal runaway. The lattice channels changed state, drew heat sideways, isolated the module, and kept neighboring cells below propagation temperature. No flame, no smoke, only a warning light and a system that failed without taking everything beside it. Vivian watched from inside the prototype bay. It was the first time she had crossed that threshold since the North Annex fire. The hiss of cooling lines filled the room. Her right hand trembled once. She placed it on the rail and remained there. When the final test ended, Priya read the numbers aloud. The room waited. Vivian looked through the glass at Elias standing beside the old truck. He did not raise his hands. He did not smile for the cameras. He simply touched the brass star hanging from the key. Useful before beautiful. At 11:20, Carol Ames drove the municipal vehicle off Halcyon's court and onto Riverton's snow route. The old pickup followed as a mobile power and monitoring unit. Elias drove. June sat beside him. Vivian sat on the other side, her tablet balanced on one knee. "The seat belt still sticks," she said. "Pull slowly." She did. For 2 hours, the white truck pushed snow through steep residential streets, powered its salt spreader, ran cabin heat, and stopped at intersections without losing thermal balance. The lattice module stayed within 2 degrees from first hill to last. At one intersection, an ambulance became trapped behind a stalled delivery van. The municipal truck cleared a path. The old pickup used its output cable to power the van's frozen lift long enough to retract it. No one had planned that part. That was why it mattered. At noon, Halcyon's board reconvened without waiting for the vehicles to return. Live data streamed to the auditorium screens. The Crownbridge representative withdrew the increased offer, citing uncertainty around material technology rights. Without the promise of owning Lattice 9, the deal looked less like rescue and more like liquidation. The board rejected the sale 7 votes to 5. It removed Adrian from the board. It appointed an independent safety committee chaired by Moira Chen, reinstated Dana Ruiz, and authorized negotiations with Lantern Works under terms that publicly credited Lena Mercer as co-inventor. Vivian remained chief executive by the same 9-3 vote that had suspended her. When the result reached the truck, Vivian read it twice. June leaned across the bench seat. "Did you win?" Vivian looked out at the snow-covered street. "The company gets another chance." "That is not what I asked." Vivian smiled. "No, I did not win. We stopped something wrong." June seemed satisfied with that. Elias kept his eyes on the road, but the corner of his mouth moved. 3 months later, Mercer Machine Works no longer leaked in 3 places. It leaked in one. Elias considered that progress. The foreclosure notice had been removed from the door after Lantern Works paid the cure amount from its first manufacturing draw. The shop added 6 machinists, 3 former Halcyon engineers, and a second shift. The old office became too small, so Theo built a glass meeting room along the east wall, using reclaimed factory windows. A new sign hung above the entrée. "I'd not create it. Our job is not to celebrate that the truth eventually survived. Our job is to build systems in which it does not have to survive us." Then she stepped away from the microphone and let Elias explain the machine. June sat on the test barrier, swinging her boots. The brass star hung from the ignition key. When the demonstration ended, she took it down and carried it to the new safety laboratory. There, above a row of clean work tables, she hung it on a simple steel hook between 2 keys, one for the old truck and one for the lab. Useful before beautiful on one side. Look closer on the other. That was how the story remained after the headlines moved on. Not as the story of a powerful woman who saved a struggling father. She did not. Not as the story of a gifted man who rescued a failing company. He did not do that either. It was the story of what happens when people stop confusing Polish with worth. A corporation had looked at a quiet engineer and seen an employee it could remove. A board had looked at a safety warning and seen a delay. A chief executive had looked at a rusted truck and seen embarrassment. A bank had looked at a machine shop and seen collateral. Each judgment had been efficient. Each had also been incomplete. The old truck carried more than a battery system beneath its weathered bed. It carried years of work done without applause. It carried a woman's evidence after her voice was gone. It carried a father's promise, a daughter's faith, and the stubborn idea that usefulness does not become less real because no one important has noticed it yet. Vivian changed because she finally looked longer than the first impression. Elias changed because he allowed the work to leave its hiding place. Neither change was clean. Both cost them. Trust worth having usually does. And Lena's work survived not because the world became fair at the right moment, but because people refused to let the wrong record become the final one. They refused to sign the easy page. They refused to move the tolerance. They refused to leave when the system failed. That was the real invention. Lattice 9 moved heat before it became danger. The people around it learned to do something similar with truth. They carried it out of the hidden places before silence could harden around it. Years later, visitors to Lantern Works still stopped at the faded blue truck near the entrance. Some laughed at first. Most caught themselves. June, older then, would sometimes point to the primer gray door and tell them it was never repaired, because her father said not every scar was a defect. Then she would lift the false bed and show them the branching ceramic lines beneath it. But she always made them read the brass star before she explained anything else. Useful before beautiful. Look closer. The lesson was small enough to hang from a key. It was large enough to change everything.